to an unpleasant finale, but a somber examination on the state of society and the limits of entertainment. A heartbreaking 50 Cent's message served as a wake-up call for the whole company, showing that despite an egotistical and competitive mentality, there are still things that are untouchable by the game and sacred. As the final reports of this battle began to fade, the story's lasting image was that of a grieving son standing up for his mother's dignity. It was up to the Harris family to repair their tarnished reputation, knowing that they will always be the world witness the humiliation of the Southern monarch not by a superior poet, but by those who went too far and shouldn't have been touched. The heavy burden of a moral shortcoming he could not defend. As the news cycle went on, the lesson continued, evident as well. Everyone is aware that despite the possibility of earning money and re-establishing jobs, losing your honor in the eyes of the community, celebrity won't make it go away. The story ended with a sense of closure that left no winners and only the lingering sorrow of a man who had to guard his mother's grave from those he formerly considered to be peers. The same people he formerly considered to be peers. Now that we have covered the whole extent of this awful and very personal matter, we would want to talk to you directly. Do you think 50 Cent was right to step aside and let his melancholy be expressed via his silence? Or should he become more aggressive in an effort to preserve his mother's good name? Did you find the level of disrespect shocking? By King Harris. And do you believe that T will ever be able to completely undo the damage this has done to the Harris family's legacy? Please feel free to express your thoughts in the space provided for comments below. Since this conversation is about more than just rap, emphasizes the values that our society respects and the limits that must never be crossed. If you like us going into great detail on to show your support for the real and honest stories behind the headlines, don't forget to hit the like button. Register, become a member of the channel, and turn on your notifications to be the first to know as we analyze the biggest business-related emotional dramas. Your engagement keeps us in the spotlight on the significant narratives. So I'm grateful. We appreciate you becoming a part of our community and for watching this. Have you ever witnessed a heartless legend finally give in? It has been demonstrated that 50 Cent can survive 9 bullets. We have seen him ruin entire careers with a single smile. Furthermore, we have observed he trolls the most powerful people in the industry without even blinking. But today, the internet is emitting a unique kind of energy because the Genet mogul is rumored to have had enough. The viral storm started when T's son after King Harris posted a very offensive and personal video. The whole hip-hop community fell silent by mocking the grave of 50 Cent's late mother, Sabrina Jackson. King Harris not only crossed a line, but he also set the entire business on fire. Rumor has it that 50 Cent squad has stopped laughing for the first time in 20 years. 50 Cent reportedly sent T a horrible private message instead of threats. The letter conveyed the pure anguish of a guy who lost his mother in a disaster when he was just 8 years old. Imagine the situation. T, the king of the South, is standing in his house when he gets a message on his phone from his most formidable enemy. He feels breathless and ashamed as a result. When news of this emotional breakdown spreads, fans are shocked and ask, has the trolling stopped too? Had King Harris just placed his family's standing in jeopardy? In this horrifying message, T is begging for a solution to the unfixable as we go deeper into the dramatic reports of this private chat and the alleged tears behind the scenes. Be prepared, since this is no longer just a beef. This is a horrible look at what happens when the game of hip-hop destroys the only thing that really counts. Stay in as we learn the catastrophic contents of the telegram that changed everything. The vitality as soon as news got out that, following the release of King Harris's video, 50 Cent allegedly wrote T a sincere private message. 50 Cent has been considered the best provocateur for a long time, a man whose primary tools are humor and sarcasm. But the insider claims that the Joker's mask has finally been removed, exposing a distressed son. The dispute stems from the ridicule of Sabrina, which many fans believe should have been prohibited. Jackson, the mother. 50 Cent was the victim of a horrible incident when he was a small boy. The letter sent to Tay, "I lacked the customary haughtiness and threats of violence," according to industry sources who claim to have seen the exchange. Violence, but instead was a solemn reflection on the pain of losing a father and the lack of honor in attacking the dead. Fans and other musicians were shocked to learn that a young man like King Harris would be comfortable talking about a tragedy that affected one of the most significant figures in hip-hop. The reports state that T was utterly astounded and disbelieving, reading a competitor's remarks while seated in his home, which had more disappointment rather than anger. 50C reportedly told T that even though he had always respected him as a father, his culture was permanently altered by witnessing his son mock a deceased mother. The stakes for both men were now higher than any record sale or chart. Positions since the conflict had moved into the realms of human decency and the sacred. The bond between a mother and her kid. Even the Harris family's most ardent supporters found it difficult to defend the actions of a 20-year-old who seemed to have lost all sense of boundaries. Rumor had it that T had apologized to 50 Cent over the phone many times, but his calls went straight to voicemail because the Gunnet mogul was supposedly too emotional to speak. Instead of his rival, T felt deceived by his own family members, whose desire for internet fame had tarnished their reputation. Hip-hop culture, which is frequently characterized by conflict and drama, was placed in a special circumstance of compassion when people began sharing old footage of 50 Cent, talking about the effects of his mother and how her death inspired his yearning. The reaction from the fans was swift and fierce, with thousands of dev demands that King Harris be held accountable for his comments as well as T. I also disagree with the contempt. Observers saw that the mood in Atlanta was gloomy as the reality of the situation began to set in, and the typically raucous and proud Harris family was remarkably silent in the face of such a very personal tragedy. T.I.'s internal conflict was reportedly a conflict between his love for his child and his understanding of the street customs that prohibit discussing a man's mother, especially if she was no longer around to defend herself. Meanwhile, 50 Cent was allegedly surrounded by his closest friends and coworkers, who were shocked by the change in his conduct from his usual trolling self to a man who was obviously grieving the memory of his past. The breach of the unwritten norms of the game and the reports had produced a division that appeared to continue forever. The terrible message of 50 Cent's dominated discourse for days. As the narrative developed, it was clear that this was a turning point for everyone involved and that this one unpleasant movie would have long-lasting ramifications. The industry was divided between those who were terrified of what may happen to him in the future and people who were upset over 50 Cent. That would be his response when the sadness returned to the legendary fire that has defined his career. The story struck a chord with everyone who had ever lost a parent, and the high emotional stakes made it the most talked about event in recent hip-hop history. The Harris family was forced to deal with the fallout from a debate that touched on the most sensitive facets of human existence. 50 Cent appears to be looking for a piece that the company seldom ever allows because he is tired of the never-ending cycle of negativity. One guy still remembers what it was like to be an 8-year-old boy abandoned in the world. Despite the television empires and platinum medals, according to reports of his fall, the public was fascinated and worried about what T would do next as the pressure mounted, knowing that anything he said would have to be enough to bridge the gap between his son's mistake and 50 Cent's suffering. The debate about who was the better rapper was ended, possessing more riches, but about the fundamental values of respect and ancestral protection. The world was waiting to see if they could preserve the family legacy, which had been built on the notion of the family business from inside, suffer the damage. Tension remained as further details of the covert communication began to leak, suggesting that 50 Cent had asked T how he would respond if someone made fun of his own mother. In the same way, reports state that this question afflicted T and caused several heated family get-togethers when King Harris's future position in the family business was questioned into uncertainty. The emotional toll and the sense that a disaster was slowly taking shape were evident in every detail that was disclosed. Motion was inevitable for everyone who was watching the story online. The Harris family found themselves in a predicament where neither money nor themselves could protect them from the torrent of genuine suffering that their fame had unleashed. The unfortunate reality that some remarks cannot be undone and some wounds are too deep for time to heal on its own, however, remained the main focus as this saga's first part drew to an end. OWN. The silence from the Harris camp was beginning to be seen as a confession of guilt. Even though 50 Cent's quiet dignity was made public, mourning gave him a respect he had not received in years. The globe was left to wonder if this was the game's pivotal moment and if hip-hop rivalry will ever be the same again after such a devastating blow to a legend's heart. Society continued to debate the ethics of the problem, with many bringing out 50 Cent's history of bullying. But even his harshest critics agreed that nobody ought to visit the mother's grave. The story had developed into a cultural mirror, reflecting both the advantages and disadvantages of the celebrity machine, as well as the cost of staying relevant in a world where thrives on rage. As the news continued to surface, the misery of the situation only became more clear, drawing in everyone who felt obliged to remark on the matter, from the biggest names in the business to casual listeners. Tragedy. The Harris family became entangled in a maelstrom of their own making, as 50 in the center of it all was Cent, a man whose suffering had suddenly become the most powerful force in the industry. The unfolding story only hinted at more sorrow as the layers of the struggle came to light, revealing the pure fear of a tragedy that had been going on for decades and was now visible for the world to observe and evaluate. The longer King Harris failed to publicly apologize, the more serious the situation became, making it appear as though the ultimate settlement is a distant and difficult goal for everyone involved in this terrible era of hip-hop. The past. Hip-hop's past. As word spread that the weight of 50 Cent allegedly sparked a violent brawl within the Harris residence, the situation worsened. Private communication. According to others close to the family, I was not only furious but also deeply impacted by the man he had fought for years showed. Wondering how he had failed to teach his own child the street codes, T's sense of betrayal was focused on himself. Reports state that prominent business people, who had previously maintained their objectivity, were now endorsing 50 Cent's camp, condemning the Harris family for allowing such a rude behavior. Even speculations circulated that Jay-Z noted that a mother's memory is the one thing that should always be kept in a message of solidarity. To 50 Cent. Get away from the dirt of the music industry. King Harris was receiving increasingly hostile reactions from fans, with many calling for a total boycott of his music and social media accounts until he expressed genuine contrition. Fearing that the personal stakes were becoming obvious, the Harris family's business partners started to pull away. The toxic energy of this meet would permanently stain the T of their corporate brands. I was said to be experiencing intense grief as I tried to think of a way to apologize to 50 Cent without coming off as abandoning his own son. The narrative took an unexpected turn when Tiny Harris was heard crying and pleading with T to find a way to stop the conflict before it wrecked their life on a reportedly leaked audio cassette. Tiny supposedly believed that 50 Cent would never be able to forgive them and that his grief would become targeted revenge that would target every aspect of their business and personal lives' existence. At first, King Harris reportedly remained furious, claiming that 50 Cent fostered discord in the family, had started the dispute by posting a photo of his mother, but the public's response quickly embarrassed him. Emotions were strong. Mothers were never permitted. Even in the most violent days of the 1990s, more renowned personalities in the industry began to speak out, including great rappers, now regarded as a historical record. The devastating 50 Cent statement transformed the power dynamics of the whole conflict, from trolling to an extremely painful and genuine human experience. Tales of 50 Cent crying were not interpreted as a sign of weakness, but rather as a sign that he had finally had enough of the games, asking for the restoration of the lost esteem. The tension on the Harris household was growing. Then, I was purportedly seen leaving a high-level meeting with local elders and religious officials to seek guidance on how to atone for a walk, which was a violation. It didn't appear to be forgiven. The drama had moved from the music charts to a family's struggle to survive that was being torn apart by the actions of one young man who didn't know when to give up. The neighborhood was left in a condition of breathless anticipation, waiting to see if 50 Cent would accept any form of apology or if the bridge had burnt so thoroughly that it could not be crossed. Every social media post 50 Cent made was now being scrutinized for signs of his mental health. He had stopped posting his normal jokes and had entered an odd period of silence. This silence was perceived by many as the calm before a storm, or perhaps as a true warning as he faced with the disdain directed at the woman who raised him. The Harris family's legacy was in danger, and the public's memory of their success on reality shows was fading, being replaced by the image of a dad unable to stop the disdain coming from his own home. Rumors claimed King Harris had been excluded from many important Atlanta recording facilities until he publicly apologized to the Jackson family. Everyone who witnessed T could feel the emotional strain he was under, since he appeared to be carrying the weight of the entire world on his shoulders while trying to appear brave for the cameras. The betrayal of the values he stood for was the hardest thing to comprehend. And there were allegations that his contact with King Harris completely broke out. The industry was seeing the slow-motion collapse of a prominent couple's reputation, as well as 50 Cent's deadly message remained in the center of the entire disaster. The stakes were tremendous, and everyone involved had a moment of truth. Had never been higher. As the world anticipated the beginning of the third act of this horrible story, as the details of the message were debated in bars and boardrooms throughout the country, it became clear that a new standard for what was appropriate in a culture that often disregards those who go by well-known names. Now the Harris family was struggling to make ends meet. Conversely, 50 Cent symbolized the agony that everyone goes through when the past is turned against the present. The drama had moved beyond the screen and into the audience's feelings, creating a sense of urgency that demanded a resolution honoring the memories of the departed. As the days went by, the stillness on both sides only raised the tension by implying that what happened next would be crucial to the evolution of hip-hop culture and the idea of family. Loyalty in the digital age. Everyone was holding their breath as the Harris family prepared their next move, knowing that if they made one more mistake, all they had may be lost. Worked for a while. 50 Cent continued to silently guard both the mother he had lost and the respect he was attempting to reclaim. When allegations surfaced about T.I.'s last desperate attempt to get in touch, the terrible climax of this controversy reached its peak. 50 Cent, by a third-party mediator in an effort to repair the significant harm that had been done. Those who are close to the eye was willing to do whatever it took to make things right, even if it meant admitting his son's pain in public. Activated, but 50 Cent persisted in his somber withdrawal. The sector was put into suspended animation as a result of the King Harris allegedly had an emotional breakdown when it was discovered that he had finally been forced to admit the devastation he had inflicted. Behind closed doors, when the storyline shifted from one of internet conceit to a horrible lesson in the consequences of unchangeable claims, the emotional strain no longer stemmed from winning a quarrel, but on the persistence of the Harris family name, which was now associated with the pinnacle of contempt. The reactions of the streets were cold and severe, with multiple reminders that he was now being treated with the same ferocity that had been employed for years to demand respect, because of the incapacity to manage his own house. In the end, 50 Cent's camp released a succinct statement through one of its associates declaring that 50 was grateful for the legends and fans' support in paying tribute to his mother, but he would not be taking part in any more public back and forth on the topic. This decision to keep quiet instead of launching a counteroffensive Was thought to be the most successful 50, the Harris family was forced to lament their actions in silence. The person it had been revealed as the pure fear of a man who struggled to rise from the impoverished to the top, only to be returned to his early suffering by a young man who had never felt such pain. Rumors that King Harris and T would never get along persisted, gained traction when it was uncovered that the son's father had taken away his professional assets and told him to fend for himself, till he found a method to earn money, the family's esteem in exchange. The betrayal was complete when the public watched in shock and the family broke up, a mix of censure and pity. The several dramatic turns led to an unpleasant finale, but a somber examination on the state of society and the limits of entertainment. A heartbreaking 50-cent message served as a wake-up call for the whole company, showing that despite an egotistical and competitive mentality, there are still things that are untouchable by the game and sacred. As the final reports of this battle began to fade, the story's lasting image was that of a grieving son standing up for his mother's dignity. It was up to the Harris family to repair their tarnished reputation, knowing that they will always be the world witness the humiliation of the Southern monarch not by a superior poet, but by those who went too far and shouldn't have been touched. The heavy burden of a moral shortcoming he could not defend. As the news cycle went on, the lesson continued, evident as well. Everyone is aware that despite the possibility of earning money and reestablishing jobs, losing your honor in the eyes of the community, celebrity won't make it go away. The story ended with a sense of closure that left no winners and only the lingering sorrow of a man who had to guard his mother's grave from those he formerly considered to be peers. The same people he formerly considered to be peers. Now that we have covered the whole extent of this awful and very personal matter,